We're well into February, but that doesn't mean it's too late to set any goals, and while I've already begun tackling some of mine with the new year, I wanted to share them now with you. In going over my goals, I've divided them into 3 sections. All relate to reading, but each relates to a different part of my reading life. Last year, my main goals were to read 100 books and to grow this channel, and overall I was successful. However, this year I made some adjustments to my goals, including to the number of books I want to read, which I'll be covering here. While reading should be a fun and casual hobby, I don't see anything wrong with setting goals, challenging myself, or encouraging good habits. And when it comes to maintaining a presence on BookTube, goals are especially important. The 3 sections will be divided by my goals related to reading itself, the goals I have for my channel, and what I'm calling anti-goals, which I'll explain further when we reach that section. When it comes to my reading life, I have a few goals in mind. First, I want to expand my reading tastes. While I'll always favor fantasy, having enjoyed the genre extensively last year, I want to keep it fresh. To begin, I want to reinvigorate my love for the classics. A big fan of Jane Austen, and someone who has read dozens of old books, including everything from the Iliad to Jane Eyre, I want to dig deeper. So far, I've enjoyed what I've read. I've already read Middlemarch, and it was a fantastic book. I've also read Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway for the second time, and I've purchased several books which I plan to dive into, including more by George Eliot and Virginia Woolf, and those by Elizabeth Gaskell. In choosing the books I want to read, I placed a particular emphasis on female authors, though there are a handful like Madame Bovary which are written by male writers, and I've already done a video covering the classics I hope to tackle this year. Secondly, I'd like to read more genres in general. While I plan to read mostly fantasy, I'd like to change things up on occasion. The first genre I'd like to start exploring is the thriller genre, as I've loved the few books from the genre which I have read, including Room, which made one of my top 10 lists, and which was one of those books I stayed up until 4 in the morning reading. From there, if I have the time and the money, I'd also like to dabble in the world of literary books. As with thrillers, I've already chosen which books within that category I'd like to buy and read first, though it will be in the second half of the year if I have time to get to them. And with a potential move, I might find myself quite busy. Finally, we come to my Goodreads count. While I read 100 books last year, I set the goal to 85 for 2024, because there are longer books I'd like to tackle, including not only the Stormlight Archives, which I'm loving so far, but the Wheel of Time series. If I end up passing this goal, I will move it up to 100, but I'm not putting any pressure on myself. I've also started the same tracking system on Storygraph, and it's been fun seeing my stats take shape. As for the stats on my BookTube channel, be sure to hit subscribe if you're enjoying this video so far. Next, we come to my BookTube goals. Even more so than my reading, it's been vital to make goals for the growth of my channel. I've already implemented 2 major changes to the channel since last year. That of posting twice a week instead of once, and of filming myself instead of relying on graphics and an animated counterpart. All the booktubers I've seen show their faces, and I've already noticed a difference in my ability to connect with others since making the change. To that end, my first goal for this channel is to maintain a consistent schedule. While there might be the odd day I miss or the occasional video I post a day late, I've done well so far. With a goal of posting twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, I have my schedule down to the topics and their outlines planned for the first half of the year, and for parts of the end as well. This year, more than ever, I wanted to be organized and intentional in what I posted and when. While I'm trying to allow some room for spontaneity, it's been helpful having a guideline when it comes to what I should post next, and I'm brimming with ideas beyond that. Second, I want to continue batching content. While I usually schedule my videos the day of or the day before, the actual filming and writing process is done in chunks. The script you're listening to right now, for example, was written the same day as those of the last 2 videos I posted. I aim to film 3 videos at a time, where I can, allowing me to focus solely on editing and posting when the time comes for a video to go live. Third, I want my videos to be more geared towards books. This should go without saying, since I've always considered myself a BookTube channel. But in the earlier days of this channel, there was a particular emphasis on Twilight. Furthermore, I also do writing content, but I wish this to be secondary. While I'm still doing Twilight-related content, I plan to do less as time wears on, if just so I can cover other books I'm reading. I also want to have more time to talk about books as a whole, covering everything from BookTube to reading as a hobby. Finally, and this might be my most lofty goal, I'd like to reach 1,000 subscribers. Thus far, I have just over 600, and an initial surge at the year's start made me hopeful I could hit this milestone. However, my growth has slowed again, and overall, my growth can be very unpredictable, alternating between waterfalls and trickles. In order to achieve this goal, I plan to focus on the first 3 goals: making consistent videos, batching them, and doubling down on content related to books, while also doing what research I can on both being a YouTuber and a BookTuber. My fingers are crossed that with reaching 1,000, I can be monetized by the year's end, as my watch hours were already fairly close last time I checked. Now we come to what I'm calling my anti-goals. In short, these are the reading-related things I want to avoid doing. Stopping myself from doing something seems to be harder than doing something I should. And in all honesty, I have already failed the first of these goals, though I've amended the initial goal with the intention of trying again. With my first goal being to stick to a book buying ban, you can probably guess what happened. I broke it. The original plan was that I couldn't buy any more books until I'd read at least 50 of the ones I already owned. However, only a week or so ago, I broke that ban. I want to blame extenuating circumstances, but really it was my own impatience. The book that was the death knell, so to speak, was Brandon Sanderson's Dawn Shard. Being immersed in the Stormlight archives, it was the only related novella I didn't yet have. Worse, it features one of my favorite side characters, and takes place before the 4th novel, which I'm holding off reading until Dawn Shard arrives in the mail. If that wasn't bad enough, Amazon offered me one of those month-long free trials of Prime, and the result was that I bought the first 2 Dune novels. My brother introduced me to the new film 2 weeks ago, and I loved it. So here's a word of advice. If you're on a book buying ban, don't watch film adaptations of books you potentially want to read. I will say that the money I spent came strictly from tips, so I don't feel guilty for money spent so much as for the fact that I bought more books I didn't need. The original goal was to read 50 books before I bought more, but I've adjusted it so that I can't buy more until I've read 60. Furthermore, as noted before, I can only use tip money to buy books, but there are some caveats. First, while I can't intentionally seek out books, if I'm in a thrift store or Value Village and I see a book that's $5 or less that's on my wish list, I can grab it. But this has to be a chance thing, and I can only grab those books which are already on my books I want list. If there's one thing I've been good at, it's been being intentional about what I buy. If something isn't on my list, I will leave a bookstore empty-handed. In addition to maintaining my book buying ban, my second goal is to expand my hobbies. While I love reading, I'd like to have other passions, and I plan to start drawing and painting with regularity. Thus far, I've attempted 2 pieces, though both were completed to mixed results due to a lack of quality paper. This brings me to my last anti-goal, which is to spend the tip money I do make on things other than books, something I did succeed in before my lapse. With my tips, I bought a set of art markers, a watercolor sketchbook, and paintbrushes more appropriate for watercolor art. It sounds strange to say that I'm proud of blowing money on art supplies, but with my book addiction being what it is, it really takes a lot for me not to liquidate all extra funds into paperbacks. When it comes to reading, BookTube are not being as obsessive about reading. I believe in the importance of setting goals, even if I end up failing them. It's rare that anybody achieves all of the goals they've prescribed for themselves, but in setting them, we can accomplish more than if we hadn't, and push ourselves to make changes for the better. Plus, sometimes it's okay to set our sights lower. In choosing to read 85 books instead of 100, I hope to have more time to immerse myself in the books I do read. After all, while I'm proud of the number of books I read last year, there were downsides to the experience, which I address in the video on the left. As always, thank you for watching, and happy reading!